Hi, today's date is September 2nd, 2024. My name is Mia Risberg, and I'm a visual artist based in Michigan in the United States. I live in the college town of Ann Arbor with my husband, our 2 teenagers, and our dog. I have a studio where I make work, which is mostly focused on paintings and drawings. I was born in Sweden, but often moved as a child. So by the time I was 13 years old, my family had already lived in 4 different countries, and those were Sweden, France, Belgium, and the US. So I went through a lot of changes and transitions as a kid. I eventually emigrated to the US as a young adult and went to college in New York City. So these frequent moves I experienced as a child made me very adaptable to change as well as multilingual, but it also made me feel somewhat rootless. Since there was no internet or email at the time, it was also harder to keep in touch with people back then. I think this life experience left me searching for a feeling of familiarity and belonging, and it's something I often think about when I'm making work. Familiarity of place is something I eventually found in nature, which I've always loved. My great-grandfather and grandfather both worked as gardeners, and my grandparents took me fishing and berry and mushroom picking when I was little. As a child, I remember spending a lot of time alone or immersed in nature, exploring woods or streams and lakes. Our family always had a lot of animals. We had dogs and sometimes others too, such as chickens, pigeons, turtles, and more. Nature became a place of comfort and familiarity to me, regardless of where we lived, and I still feel that way now as an adult. In my paintings and drawings, I investigate narratives of nature and people, symbolic imagery, and magical realism. I'm inspired by my imagination, observations, or favorite photographs. In some works, I strive to capture spiritual moments of stillness that I observe in life. Some, such as my drawings, are quiet landscapes, while others have human presence depicted in surreal settings or as shadow figures. Other work depict a communion between humans and nature. I often simplify forms and colors in my work. This allows me to distill what I perceive into something that is not only new, but also feels calmer and more orderly than what I perceive as the chaotic external world. I try to capture some of the quiet wonder that one feels and sees as a child. Who my influences are is a question that I always find hard to answer. I think it changes based on what my interests are at a certain time. When I was younger, I really enjoyed artists like Bonnard for his gorgeous color usage. But these days, especially with so many images readily available through the internet and social media, I find myself looking at and being inspired by a lot of contemporary artists. I love the work of Swedish artist Klara Kristalova. Her ceramic work feels really fresh and whimsical and playful. I also like to look at the work of British painter Alexis Saul Gray. Her work feels like it's always evolving, and she experiments a lot, but yet she has a very unique and distinct hand. But there are many contemporary artists I admire and follow on Instagram, too many to mention here. Currently, I'm working on several oil and cold wax paintings on wood and making some smaller monotypes on paper. This summer, I started using a jigsaw for the first time to cut some shaped panels out of wood, so I'm experimenting with painting on these shaped surfaces. And besides that, I'm working on a couple of call and response projects. I'm organizing a call and response for my cohort of artists and writers that were at a residency with me. It was a residency I attended this winter called the Vermont Studio Center Residency. And we will be responding to each other's work and create a sequence of written pieces and visual arts pieces as well. I'm also making something for the Telephone Project, which was created by Nathan Langston, and it's in its 3rd iteration. It has artists from all over the world participating and working in a variety of mediums, from painting to dance and music and video. So it's going to be really cool. And you can learn more about that on their Instagram account, which is telephone_community. As an artist, I think there are many challenges, but one of the biggest ones, at least for me, is finding a balance between life and work and their different aspects. You need studio time to make work, but there's so much more you have to do as an artist, especially these days. You need to be active on social media, you have to photograph your work, write about it, apply to galleries, and so much more. So it can be hard to find the time to do it all and also take the time to be a well-rounded person who exercises, spends time with family, friends, maybe does things within the community, etc. What advice I would give to my younger self is another tough question. I had to make choices and decisions that I wish I hadn't been forced to make when I was younger, and probably should have been a little more carefree. So my advice to myself would probably be to focus more on what I want and to keep going, to be more confident, to compromise less and worry less about making a stable living. But on the other hand, in hindsight, that can also feel like a luxury when you're struggling to get by. In terms of the mediums I use or the techniques, I love trying new mediums or art techniques, but having too many options for me can feel distracting, and I actually like to work with constraints or limitations. In the past, I really loved making monotypes when I had access to a press, but I don't have one, so lately I've been doing some experiments with printmaking techniques without a press, such as doing trace monotypes. I also really enjoy working with oil and cold wax. Cold wax is a buttery medium that comes in a can that you mix in with oil paints, and it makes them dry faster. The application of the paint and wax is done with silicone tools instead of a brush, so it's less precise and detailed, and I appreciate how that forces me to be a bit looser than working with some of my other mediums, and I like the layering of paints and surfaces it creates. My oil and cold wax paintings have many applications and layers of color, so that results in a rich and textured surface that is either matte or it can have a sheen if the pieces are buffed once they're dry. I've also been experimenting with cut and drawn papers. A while back, I created a diorama of a forest scene with animals in the micro gallery that I curate, which is 813 Micro Gallery. And I had a lot of fun doing that. I felt like I was a kid again while I was making it. When I work, it's very rare that I do it in silence. I love listening to audiobooks, but I can only listen to them if I'm doing preparatory work, such as gessoing panels or doing tasks that feel less creative. If I'm painting or drawing, I listen to music, but I tend to listen to the same performer or album over and over until I'm done with the piece I'm working on. And that may sound repetitive, but it provides me with enough music in the background without distracting me. And then at the end, it's almost as if one album or artist becomes associated with that particular painting or drawing. I think the best reaction someone can have to my artwork is if they feel moved by something I've made. That's a reaction that makes me feel really happy. I've also had a couple of people use the word magical to describe a piece I've made, and I think that may be one of my favorite adjectives or compliments, because I like to think that there's a little bit of magic that exists around us all, around us in the world, and that it's there for us to see if we take the time to notice it. I hope that people feel some kind of personal connection with something I've made. It doesn't have to be the same feeling or idea I had when making a piece, though. I always find it interesting to hear other people's interpretations about something I made and how different it can be from my own. And sometimes there are surprises there. However, if someone experiences the same feeling that I had when making something, then it feels even more powerful. Besides working on paintings and drawings, one upcoming event I'm preparing for is a studio sale I will be having later this fall. To hear more about that or to see what I'm working on, you can follow me on Instagram at Mia Risberg Art. You can also sign up there for my email newsletter. I only send it out about 2 or 3 times a year. My information is the following. My email is risbergmia@gmail.com. My website address is miarisberg.com. I'm also the curator of 813 Micro Gallery, which is a small freestanding space on our property. It's a wooden structure permanently fixed in the ground that's about 18 inches wide by 14 inches high. It has a lock and a plexiglass window. And in this micro gallery, we showcase on a small scale the work of a different artist each month from different areas of the United States. This has been a really great way to share art with this community and provide the artists that participate with a low pressure space to experiment in making small works or making small scale installations. So it's been really fun. And that's about it. Thank you so much for letting me share a little bit about myself and my practice.